Hi there, my name's Keith, and welcome to Keith James Green's Bible Research. Oh, I'd like to begin by asking you a question. And the question is, how did all the complex biological systems that we see in nature today come to exist? Systems that would be the envy of the most ingenious engineer. One really good example of such a system is the human brain, consisting of 100 billion nerve cells and being more advanced than the most sophisticated computer that humans have made. And according to Stanford University professor Stephen Smith, in talking about the brain, said the following: a single human brain has more switches than all the computers and routers and internet connections on Earth. Another example of such a system is the human eye, with its ability to focus, swivel, form three-dimensional images, as well as having many other very clever innovations. So the question is, how did these systems come into existence? Well, one man believes he has the answer, and his name is Richard Dawkins. And Richard is one of the most prolific exponents of the theory of evolution in the 20th century. And he wrote a book entitled The Blind Watchmaker. And he believes that all biological life descended from one common ancestor about 3.7 billion years ago and was created by a long series of small, beneficial, random mutations over millions of years, each mutation conferring upon its lucky mutant a greater ability to survive and populate than its peers. And he calls this supposed creative mechanism the blind watchmaker. And he talks in his book as though it was a fact, as though this watchmaker actually existed. And many scientists do the same thing. They talk about it over and over, and they take it for granted as though it was a fact, as though it was an established fact, and many people seem to believe it. But is it really? Has it really been established as a fact? Well, tonight I want to go through chapter 4 of his book, in which Dawkins posits that the human eye was created by this blind watchmaker. And I want to show you that the idea he presents in his book is little more than speculation and imagination. So let's have a close look at this book, at this chapter 4, and see what he says. In the beginning of chapter 4, he rules out the possibility that the eye was created in one single step. He says the odds of that happening are 1 billion times more than all the atoms in the universe. So no wonder he rules it out, and many other scientists do the same thing. However, he then attempts to solve this problem, and by inviting the reader to ponder an imaginary idea. The idea that the job was done in small steps. And he calls these steps X, and he invites us to imagine that each X was sufficiently probable and simple enough to have occurred by chance. And so he begins to lead us down this imaginary path. He then states the following in chapter 4, page 78. Given, say, 100 million X's, we should be able to construct a plausible series of tiny graduations linking a human eye to just about anything. So he says we should be able to link it to just about anything, maybe a rock or something. I'm not sure what he had in mind. The only trouble is he never does this himself. He asks us to do it. He never presents these 100 million X's. Instead, in chapter 4, he only posits about 8 imaginary gigantic steps, not small steps, gigantic ones, plus makes a few sweeping statements concerning the supposed evolution of the eye. And he tries to explain how these 8 steps conferred a particular advantage to creatures in the past. And he does this by selecting 8 types of eyes that currently exist in nature today, ranging from simpler eyes to more complex eyes. And he proposes that over billions of years, eyes evolved from simpler beginnings until voila, the modern human complicated eye. Now, I say these steps are gigantic steps because Michael Behe, who is a biochemist, regarding Dawkins' idea, wrote the following in a book that he wrote, The Edge of Evolution. And so on page 41, he stated the following concerning Dawkins' idea. The frustrating answer is that we cannot tell. The vertebrate eye contains so many molecular components on the order of tens of thousands of different types of molecules that listing them and speculating on the mutations that might have produced them is currently impossible. Now, Behe's comment is supported by another evolutionist who is no longer with us, but he was very prominent, and his name was J. Gould. And in regard to the human eye, or mammal eyes, he said the following: could a system we do not completely understand be constructed by a process we cannot specify? So he presented a good question. So why do I say that chapter 4 is little more than Dawkins' imagination and speculation? Well, I say it for at least three different reasons. The first one is because the 100 million imaginary mutations linking the human eye to just about anything are just that, imagination. Just his imagination. It's really obvious. Secondly, because there's not the slightest hint that the idea is based on any scientific peer-reviewed paper. Now, he actually says that his book is not a book of reference. But there are references, even though there are references at the back, but there's nothing to indicate that his imaginary idea was based on a scientific paper. In fact, it's obvious that it is just not. Thirdly, all the examples of the simpler eyes still exist today, and they're getting along just fine. And apparently they've probably existed for 1 million years, these simple eyes that he described, that he chose from nature today. So why does he assume that they needed to evolve into something more complex in order to survive? It's a complete assumption. So in conclusion, I must admit the book contains some very impressive abstract thinking. It's a really good story, but the trouble is it's not based on any known reality. And as another eminent biologist and evolutionist, Lynn Margulis, and critic of neo-Darwinism, in an interview with Discover magazine, she said the following: Neo-Darwinists say that new species emerge when mutations occur and modify an organism. I believed it until I looked for evidence. Well, I've also been looking for evidence for about 5 years, and it's simply not there, and I'm afraid imagination is not evidence. So I put it to you that the idea is little more than speculation and imagination. Well, that's it for me now. I hope you've enjoyed this review of chapter 4, as I've been going right through Dawkins' book and talking about each chapter. So I hope to continue to do so in the future. So until next time, goodbye from Keith James Green's Bible Research.